Okay, so first things first, I told y'all we would talk about how things are going to go. We will have a test on immunity next Tuesday. So what we'll do is we'll finish up immunity today uh, on this Zoom, and on Thursday I will release. I'm going to drop it like my track. No, I will send out the study guide for immunity, guys. There's some things on the there's some things on the PowerPoint that we didn't go over. Things that I didn't particularly think that you would need to know right now with the way we're not at school together. So it'll be over exactly what the study guide says. So if it's on the PowerPoint but it's not on the study guide, it's not going to be on the test. I think that's fair. We in the college I teach at Northeast, we have to have 4 tests and 2 proctored exams. Well, last semester we took 5 tests, 2 of them being labs, and then we've taken 2 more on here. So that'll give us 7 and 2. This week there is this is important, so make sure you're listening. And if you're watching this later, because I know I talked to Michaela and a few other people that are going to watch it later, there is a quiz, a discussion, and an assignment on online for this week, guys. I'm not piling on junk work for y'all. I'm not piling on, just busy work. The quiz is just to make sure you understand basic concepts. It's only 11 questions. The real big thing that I really want y'all to do, and I think is interesting, is I want you to do all 3 of them. But the thing I think is interesting is the discussion. It talks about vaccines. It talks about immunity, herd immunity, like things that are really going on right now, and things we've mentioned in this class before. So there's a discussion, a quiz, and an assignment. I think if you really sit down and did it all, it would maybe take you an hour. So what I'm going to do to justify having 3 assignments this week, once I finish Zoom, I'm going to go get the study guide. We're going to Zoom Thursday morning at 9:15. I will keep you for about 20 minutes, so from like 9:15 to 9:35, and we're gonna move on to the respiratory system and get started on that. And that'll be the last thing we probably cover over the PowerPoints. And then if there's some things that y'all want to cover that y'all just want to throw out there, we'll talk about that stuff. But the respiratory system will be the last thing that we cover and probably test over. And it could take us the entire month of May. The respiratory system is pretty interesting. And plus, we have like an hour together a week, or about an hour together, 45 minutes a day. So that's all going to be there for you. And we'll move on to the respiratory system. And that'll be the last thing we cover per the PowerPoints. And then whatever y'all want to talk about. So if there's something that interests you or something that you want to really look into, you can send me an email, and we will talk about that.
Student led right there.
Yeah, student led all day. Next thing on the thing, and Payne, you may be able to tell them more about this, but from what I understand, voting's today. I'm going to turn this over to Payne for a second, or Cooper, or whoever. I can see y'all 3 on there. Y'all are all seniors, so I'll let y'all go ahead, Payne.
Yeah, it's just on the CHS voting site that we vote all of our officers on. If you log on to there, you should be able to vote, and your username would be like mine. It's the first letter of your first name, and then your last name, and then 12. It's your senior year, and then your password is your 4-digit lunch number.
Okay, perfect.
Like not the 5-digit that they just changed for no reason this year, but the 4-digit.
Okay, and guys, yeah, go ahead, Cooper.
It also tells you on there how to log in if you don't remember.
Okay,
so underneath.
Good deal. And I know, guys, I know Taylor's been sending out a bunch of things on Facebook and stuff like that. So just make sure you're keeping in touch with her. I know there were some people who didn't have like senior pictures. So, maybe keep in touch with Taylor. And if you're not on Facebook, I'm sure you could email her, or she's on Twitter or something. Like, I don't know where all she's posting it, but I know it's there. So that's important stuff. Like, I know that y'all want to vote for superlatives and things like that. So everybody that's not on here, if you see people that are on here or people that may not go on there and vote, go ahead and make sure you reach out to them. All right. Anything else, since I've got people in here who would know, anything else that needs to be talked about for seniors before we move on? I know there's voting today, and Coach Carpenter said that he figured today would be the only day needed. But if they do have a runoff, I think they're going to do it tomorrow and Thursday, is what I understand. I'll send out a reminder if there's a runoff or if I see something from Coach Carpenter. Anything else I'm missing? Payne, Cooper, anybody that's been in those meetings or anything that I need to reach out with y'all? Nothing?
I
Okay.
think that's good. That's like
All
that's the only new thing that's happened in the last 4 weeks. So we're okay.
Yeah, I know, man. Some excitement for once, right? All right. Oh, I need to share my screen. Hold on. There it is. Okay. Everybody see that? We good there? Okay. All right. So, guys, before we move on, like I said, we're only on slide 57 of 126, but we're just going to cover what I think because it took us almost 2 weeks to cover the first 57 slides, which is fine. That means you're engaged. That means we were talking. I know one day we spent almost the entire 30 minutes talking about the coronavirus, and we talked about the thymus and immunity, things like that, and that's fine with me. I'm not pushing to move through the slides. So, like I said, anything that I will tell you this, something that will be on the test that's not on your PowerPoint, but it's something we talked about in the last little thing. So you can go back and rewatch the videos. We talked about acute, hyperacute, and chronic, like how the body rejects sometimes. So remember when we talked about hyperacute, this was right before Mr. Barnett was jumped in and talked about how important it is that y'all keep working, which y'all know that. I mean, this is dual credit, so it's definitely important that you're still working. But with Mr. Barnett, he talked about, or I'm sorry, before that, we talked about hyperacute, acute, and chronic. All right. So when we talk about rejection, so that was talking about having someone come in and getting a new organ. So hyperacute was going to be when the body basically starts attacking it as soon as it hits. And on the website we looked at on Johns Hopkins, it talked about how that was not very common anymore because we can test blood types. We can test, is the body going to do this? Now, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it's very, very uncommon. All right. And then there was acute, and acute was like 3 to 7 days. And like your body starts to build up these antibodies that then attack. Whereas with hyperacute, your body already had those antibodies in it. And if y'all remember back, I don't know if you remember this far back, it's been a while. We were talking about blood types, and we were talking about how when women are pregnant, a lot of times, if the negative and the positives, they attack each other. That would be a for instance of like the body already having antibodies in there that would attack something else that the body's producing. And another thing was chronic. So chronic is long term, and that just kind of goes back over the things we talked about on Thursday of last week. So when we look at this, we talked about all this stuff. We talked about phagocytes. We talked about inflammatory response. We talked about natural killer cells. Cool name. All right. Well, here's a little chart we've been looking at over and over and over. So we've mentioned this already. We've talked about the first line of defense. We talked about skin. We talked about mucous membranes. We talked about how they fight off things. And then we've talked about the second line of defense. We talked about the natural killer cells. We talked about the inflammatory response. We talked about the fever. Now, someone remind me real quick, how does the inflammatory response and fever, how do they help with defense?
Does fever mean like it raises the body temperature because so much is going on, or does it raise it in order to like kill things? And
A lot of times it raises, sometimes it will be because you have something going on, but a lot of times it raises it to kill things. It raises it to help with enzyme production. It helps or to help with them working quicker. So the fever, now with inflammatory response, a lot of times fever does go along with that because, that area is hot, that area starts to heat up. And sometimes if you have a large injury, your body has the fever. So they work together, but also the fever sometimes works because like you get something in your body that's not needed. Good.
Fever always like an entire body thing, or would your knee swelling up and getting hot technically be
right
fever?
now let me answer that for you, Payne. There are different, now that does help with that, but in this case we were talking about the systemic, so we were talking about basically the entire body. But yeah, a lot of times when your knee swells, you do get that higher temperature there, and it's because of the swelling and the pain, and that goes along with this right here. Hold on, let me find it. Yeah, right here. So right here, you get the pain and the swelling and the redness and the heat. So I wouldn't necessarily call that fever. I would just call it like that's more of the heat because of an increased blood flow. Whereas when we use the word fever, we're talking about like the system, like your entire body. Okay. Whereas with heat, like with the swelling. So for instance, that night where I hurt my knee, it was really, really warm. It was because it was starting to swell because the blood flow was moving to it there. Yeah. Very good.
So fever is like a entire body thing.
Correct. When we're talking about fever, we're talking about
It's not
systemic.
like more concentrated.
Very good. Yeah. We're talking about systemic. And in this study, yes. Very good. All right. So we've talked about the first line of defense. We talked about the second line of defense. Now we want to talk about the third line of defense. Okay. So the third line of defense is the adaptive defense. It's the specific defense, the one that actually attacks it. All right. So here are the three different things we're going to talk about. All right. So we have antigen specific, we have systemic, and we have memory. Okay. Now, antigen specific basically is it recognizes something and it specifically goes and attacks that foreign substance. The next one is systemic. When we talk about systemic, basically it's saying that you don't just have something going on at that one spot. So let's say that there is something going on in your body that's not needed, or you have a cut, or you have cells in there that aren't there. Well, what your body's going to do is your body's going to go in there, and it's not just going to be the initial infection site. So think about certain types of diseases. So, and I know none of us really like talking about it, but when we talk about cancer, a lot of times cancer is in the initially is in one area, right? But then it tends to spread. So what this is doing is this immunity is not restricted to that one site. Like, it's not just fighting off things at that one site. It's trying to prevent the spread. It's over the entire body. Okay. Now, memory. All right. Memory. How many of y'all remember talking about memory cells in biology? I may have mentioned this a little bit last week, but do y'all remember anything about those?
I don't really remember talking about those much. I don't think we covered immunity like in depth that much.
Okay, that's really, it's not good, but I appreciate that, because now that means we can move on to something that I want to talk about. Okay, so you know what? Let's go ahead and move to that real quick, because I think that'll help us talking about these things. Okay, so we have two different types of immunities. Let me pull this up. Yeah, here we go. All right. So we have two different types of immunity, and they are active and passive. All right, now, and from exobiology, now I know this has been a while for some of y'all, so it's not something that like you said, Payne, you're not probably going to remember it, even if you did study. It's been 4 or 5 years for some of y'all. But when we talk about immunity, we're talking about natural versus artificial. Okay, so natural being like your body's going to take it on naturally. I mean, I know that didn't really give you much help, but like natural is it enters the body without being put in there. Does that make sense? Like, you don't have someone put it in there. You get it naturally. Whereas artificial is, we're going to talk about like vaccines here in a second. All right, so the two different types. So we see active versus passive. All right, and so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint real quick, and I want to show you. All right, so active in the PowerPoint says naturally acquired during bacterial and viral infections, or artificially acquired from vaccines. Okay, so let's look at these two things. What do these two things have in common? Like, when you look at those, okay, so you get it from bacteria and viral infections, or you get it from vaccines. So what stands out to you with those two things? Anybody? Any 38 of y'all?
Because they both have this. They both have the same, like, your body has like bacteria and viral infections, and like it fights off and like gets this immunity naturally. But in the vaccines, it also carries like the disease, like that's inserted in your body in order to help you to adapt and build an immunity towards it. So don't they both pretty much have diseases?
Okay, very good, Chris. The way I would word that is they both are actively fighting something off that's put into your body. Okay, so for a vaccine, does anybody understand vaccines? Like, if they give you the vaccine, what are they putting into your body?
So weakened like version of that disease.
Very good, but it's still that disease, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So if
You're
you look
effectively
at both
introducing your body's like immune system to that disease, so that it's not going in blind when it has to fight it off in the real world if it still exists.
Very good, Max. Very good. So, guys, when we look at both of these, we are actively putting, like, there is an active thing in our body. So we have a bacterial infection, we have a viral infection, or they put an active disease into our body, and our body comes in, and what it does is it fights that off. Now, here's the cool thing about that. When it fights that off, it builds these memory cells. It builds these cells that help to remember that. And like Max said and Chris said, and that what it is once you fought it off, your body makes those memory cells, and your body makes those cells, and it's able to actively fight that when it comes back. Okay? So, for instance, when we see colds and things like that, I was talking about this a little bit about, I think it was last week, and it's really warm in my room. Sorry, I'm not going to turn the air on, but that's just a side note. It's never warm in here, but it is today. All right. So
one time we're not there to experience it.
Yeah, I know, right? Just take my word for it. I'm in a short sleeve shirt and chacos, and I'm sweating, which it's because I'm chubby, but that's how it is, man. All right, and I really get into science, so I sweat like So all right, so
when it starts getting interesting, that's when we get sweaty.
So when our body actively fights that off, it's like Max said, it builds on like this little army in our body. So, for instance, when I'm teaching this in biology, I show the Amoeba Sisters video, which it's not a bad video to go watch if you want to go watch it. But basically, what it is they have this virus guy, and he's sitting there, and they bring in this little army of amoeba, they bring this little army, and they're like, "All right, guys, that's him. Let's get him." And like they go and they like attack him, and they're like, "Well, he's been here for 4 or 5 days." Well, what it is a little bit later in the video, this other guy that looks just like that virus or bacteria, he walks in, and they're like, "Guys, it's another one. Get him." So what it is like they've learned, hey, this is bad. So you've built up that response to it. So now your body is able to actively fight it off. So with colds and things like that. Now, guys, here's the problem with that. Like these viruses and these bacterial infections, they morph and they change. But if you have had a certain type of virus or you've had a certain type of bacterial infection, a lot of times it takes you 5-6 days to get over that. But if your body builds the memory cells and that tries to happen again, it's been proven that your body literally takes like a day to fight that off. Sometimes you don't even feel the symptoms, or maybe, you run a small fever, or maybe, you just feel a little bit bad for one day, but it's your body saying, all right, we've seen this before. We're going to take it down. Okay. Now, the other one we talk about is the passive type and naturally acquired. Guys, this is going to be from the mother to the child. Okay. Whether it be when the child is still a fetus or whether it be when the mother is giving the breast milk. Now, why is it important that the mother is going to pass things down to the child?
So the child doesn't get sick later on if he gets measles or some type of disease, and so the body's recognizes it, and its immunity builds up over time.
Yes, and no. That's a good answer. Now, like measles, you're going to need a vaccine for, but you're right on the part, Chris, that it is going to help fight off some infections when you're young. Like they are giving them antibodies, they're giving them things to do help fight it off. But that's when vaccines come into play a little bit later. Now, artificially acquired. Now, when we're talking about artificial, we're talking about something that, it's the opposite of natural. Like this is something that's given to us. Okay. Now, active is going to be the vaccines. So over here, naturally acquired is if you get a bacteria infection, you get a virus, you get something like that going on. Whereas when we're talking about artificial, we're talking about the actual vaccine put into us. Our body's able to fight that off. And then with passive, so guys, like for instance, when I go and I have a sinus infection and I get a Decadron shot or I get something else, or you get a cold and you go get a shot or you get medicine, things like that, what's actually being injected into you. So what it is it's put into your body. It helps you fight off that. Now, here's the only problem with that. Does it stick around? No, it does not. Like it helps you fight that right then, but later on, because your body had to have something put into it, later on, it's not going to be there anymore.
How long does it take for your body to break down like a Decadron or a Cefton shot? Like 2 or 3 days? Completely, at least. I know it breaks it down like after like a day or so, a good bit, but like there's probably still a little bit left.
I would not knowing anything about pharmaceutical stuff. I couldn't answer your question, but I would say not very long because now this is Craig Strickland talking, not like I'm not a doctor, like I'm not like I couldn't tell you that for sure. But I mean, I would say, when you take medicine for a cold or a sinus infection, 2, 3, 4 days later with Decadron, I'm feeling better next morning. So I would say it breaks it down pretty quick, which, I mean, again, that makes sense because that's being put directly into your body. And I wish my body would just create Decadron, and just it would flow through my system, but it doesn't.
Just course through your veins.
Yeah. This is a really bad time to have bad allergies because, like, I don't want to go out because, like, I'll sneeze and then, like, I'll cough and people are like, oh, he's got it, and then, like, which I want them to stay away from me. So maybe it's not a bad thing, but yeah, it's a bad time for that. All right. Any questions about active versus passive or natural versus acquired or artificially acquired?
So like on the artificially acquired passive immunity, I just don't really understand how it's passive. I get like how it's passive from natural, but like on artificially, I'm just kind of like
Okay.
how.
Good question, Chris. To answer your question, basically what it is passive means that something is being passed on to you and your body's not actively fighting that off. Okay. Now, let me explain that. Your body is always trying to actively fight off infections. Okay. Like when I have a sinus infection, my body's trying to fight it off. All right. Now, the reason it's passive there, Chris, is because they are putting something in your body like that is an antibody that is helping to get rid of the infection. So your body is not actively attacking anything. Your body's not actively making that. It's basically put into your system. It's injected into your system. So my body is not actively making, like Decadron or whatever. I get shots. What it's doing is that's going in and that's fighting off that infection. That's fighting off some of the symptoms for me. My body, whereas with active, your body is producing antibodies. With passive, your body's not producing antibodies. Your body is allowing that serum to come in. It gets rid of the infection and then it's gone. So
it's pretty much like a temporary. It's pretty much temporary. Where active is like it's always like there, pretty much.
Yes, very good,
Okay.
very good.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
very good. All right. Okay. And guys, it is on the PowerPoint there. I like that other one, but this kind of gives you some more. And you're going to see humoral immunity versus cellular mediated immunity. That's going to be. Let me show you that slide real quick. We may actually have to talk more about this Thursday because I'm not going to keep y'all past 10 o'clock. So. Well, yeah, there it is. Humoral immunity versus cellular immunity. And that's something that I do want to talk about to kind of give y'all an idea about that. So I had that here as well. Pull it up. Okay, so humoral mediated. When I talk about the word humoral, what does that mean in the body? Not humerus like the bone, but humoral mediated. What would y'all think that means?
I actually don't know because I thought humeral was just like the bone in your arm.
Okay, so when it's talking about like in the blood, like it's suspended like in the. So right here where it says antibodies circulating in serum, like basically it means like humoral. Let me hold on. I'll show you like the actual meaning. It basically means like suspended in the immunity is mediated by macromolecules found in extracellular fluids, and that's what humoral means. It's like in the extracellular fluids, like in the blood, in the body, in the fluids, and then when you look here again, right here, cell mediated means direct cell to cell contact. So it's going to be right there. Now the big difference here is the B lymphocytes versus the T lymphocytes. All right, so the B lymphocytes are right here in our PowerPoint. All right, so right here, the T lymphocytes. So the T lymphocytes develop in the thymus. All right, so remember the thymus is there when you're younger. It helps to create these that are going in, and they're going to go in and mature there in the thymus. And then the B cells are developed in the bone marrow. All right, so if you look at this slide right here, this shows you how these are going to be developed. All right, so we have the lymphocytes being developed here. So we have the red bone marrow in the bone. All right. And what's happening is one of them is going to go to the thymus. All right, when it goes to the thymus, it's going to create right here, the T cells. All right, so maturation's happening there. So let's run through this. So lymphocytes destined to become T cells migrate in the blood to the thymus, and then the ones that are going to be B cells, they are going to stay in the red bone marrow and they're going to develop there. All right. So what happens next is they develop here in the thymus. They're going to mature there, and then they're going to move on to the lymph nodes, the spleen, and other lymphoid tissues. Now, right here, it says they are going to then be circulated into the bloodstream. All right. So these guys right here, the big difference is T cells are going to go to the thymus, whereas B cells are going to stay in the bone marrow. All right. Now, a lot of times you're going to see them called like naive or they're not completely developed yet. They're not completely. That's why they come here to the thymus and here to the bone marrow. All right. So that's what's going on. That's what this slide is. It's showing you T cells to the thymus, B cells stay in the bone marrow. They're then going to be put into the body to help fight off different types of infections. All right. Now that's again, when we look at this, while the B lymphocytes are here in the blood, they're moving the serum, they're moving the extracellular fluid, whereas these right here are going to be direct cell to cell. These are going to be cell mediated, and they're going to help fight off viruses. They're going to help fight off fungi. And these guys right here, because they're in the serum, because they're in the extracellular fluid, they're going to help with the bacteria and the viruses that are there in the extracellular fluid. All right, so extracellular is humoral mediated. Intracellular, such as tumors, things like that, are going to be cell mediated. They're going to be T lymphocytes, and humoral are going to be B lymphocytes. And guys, I don't expect you to understand that completely. That's going to be a whole nother ball game later on. I just wanted you to kind of get a gist of what's going on there.
Being in PT school, did you have to learn much immunity, like in depth?
No, we didn't. Like, I'll be honest with you. In PT school, we had a class on like pharmaceutical drugs, and this is being recorded, but this is off the record. I didn't do very well in that class, but it's because he was a pharmacy, like he had a doctorate in pharmacy, so his knowledge level was here, and my knowledge level was, I know you can't see my hand going, but it's going down still. It was
So,
way
so
down.
the way he taught in like a doctorate.
Yeah, like I was in entry level pharmacy, and he was teaching like I was in my 5th year going to be a pharmacist. Let me explain to you in PT school, and the reason that it is important to understand, not necessarily immunity, but like pharmaceutical drugs. So if you're going to be a PT, I saw some of y'all like you talking about you want to be OTs and PTs and chiropractors and things like that, and nurses, which nurses will have to know this stuff, but PT, OT, if you're not specialized, to understand pharmaceutical stuff is basically you want to be able to understand drugs. You want to understand how they affect the body. So if someone's on a certain drug or someone has a certain immune disease, you want to know what they can and can't take, and you want to know how it affects their body. So yes, I do understand passive and active immunity, but when, like, to answer your question, Payne, like when we get into this, like activated B cells and T cells, I had to go in and really study this stuff again, because from my biology degree in college, yes, I had to learn this, but in PT school, we didn't study this that much. We studied a lot more of like, we were more, if they have cardiac problems, how do you, like, we don't treat the actual disease, but yeah, you do have like 2 weeks of this, but it's nothing very, very like stressful. Now, to answer your question there though, no, I didn't have it in PT school, but to get into PT or OT or athletic training or anything like that, you have to have an exercise science or biology background. And guys, I can't stress this enough. If you are going into any of those, and there are exercise science degrees and things like that, I would, if it was me and I thought I could do it, I would go into the biology, just because it challenges you. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to be a teacher, maybe, or if you really, really are interested in just athletic training, exercise science, and things like that, but biology is going to, in my opinion, is going to challenge you more when it comes to these types of things. If you're interested more in that, or if you think medical school may be an option as well. So I hope that answered your question. I don't know if it really did, but yeah. All right. So guys, like I said, this stuff right here, this isn't stuff that I'm saying is not important. I'm just saying right now, I think it's a little bit above our level of going into. And I know in my Northeast class, we don't teach this far into that. So we will probably go ahead and finish here. On Thursday, because it's 9:51, so I've been going for 35 minutes, and I want y'all to have a little bit of time today. Thursday, this will be a big one for you, Payne, because we are going to talk about allergies and how your body, a lot of times goes into that. And then we're also going to bring up like autoimmune diseases. So we're going to talk about type 1 diabetes. We're going to talk about lupus, things like that. We'll talk about AIDS. I think that stuff's really, really interesting. So Thursday should be a pretty interesting day. Let me pull up my canvas so I can show y'all. So guys, this is something I pulled up, I put on here for y'all to do today. I think these are really cool. Like natural immunity versus vaccine acquired immunity. We talked about that. People say vaccines are linked to long-term health problems. Is that true? Now, guys, I do want you to do your research, but also like I want you to give your opinion. And listen, don't argue with each other on here. Like actually, look at this stuff and think about it. What's herd immunity? Are vaccines safe? Is it true? Number 4, isn't it true that better hygiene and nutrition were responsible for decreases in death and disease rates rather than vaccines? There's a lot of people that said a lot of different diseases because people stayed at home, because people ate better, because people were like right now we're more aware than ever. Okay, when I go out anywhere, as soon as I get back in my car, I wash my hands. Like I have a habit because of working at the hospital. Every time I went into a new room, I had to use hand sanitizer or soap, and I always had a habit, and that's been like my thing. But now, we're more thinking about hygiene. We're more thinking about nutrition and things like that because we're like, if I have better hygiene and I have better nutrition, there's less of a chance that I get this disease. So I think this right here, this discussion is good. Also, there's a quiz and there's an assignment. The assignment, there's some of y'all who've already done it, and I appreciate that. I've opened them back up. I didn't mean to close them. The assignment was there and the quiz was already there last week. So I think there's been like 40 of y'all who've already taken it, the immunity quiz and the immunity assignment. If that's the case, awesome. Just do the discussion. All right. Any questions before we are done today?
No.
Okay. All right. So, guys, don't forget if you're a senior, get online and vote today. Vote for senior superlatives, and go do that and stay in touch with Taylor. If you haven't gotten in your pictures to her, please do that as well.